Hello and thanks for joining us from our studios in Israel. Coming up in today's newscast, the terrorist behind the fatal Turkish terror attack that killed an Israeli civilian is finally caught. The IDF and the Israeli Shin Bet launched some major operations, and Israeli scientists uncover evidence of a biblical battle. I'm Natasha Kirchuk here with the latest news in Israel. The suspected terrorist who killed 39 people, including an Israeli teenager, in the New Year's Eve attack at an Istanbul nightclub has finally been captured by Turkish police following a 2-week nationwide manhunt. The alleged attacker has been named as Abdulkadir Masharipov, who was caught in a district of Istanbul called Esenyurt. According to officials, the Uzbek jihadi initially hid in a safe house where he was joined by his wife and children. He then went on the run with his 4-year-old son, who was with him when he was taken into custody in a massive police operation.
Abdulkadir Masharipov, kod adı Ebu Muhammed, Horasani Abdulkavi, Özbekistan doğumlu, 1983 Özbekistan doğumlu bir kişi. Afganistan'da eğitim almış ve 4 dil bilen, iyi yetiştirilmiş bir kişi, bir terörist.
Bununla ilgili birçok detay var ama sorgulama aşamasında olduğu için bu kadarını söylemekle yetinelim. Zamanla gelişmeler hakkında bilgiler ilgili arkadaşlar tarafından kamuoyuna verilecek. Önemli olan yapılan bu alçak saldırının failinin yakalanmış olmasıdır. Bunun arkasındaki iradenin, güçlerin her kimse ortaya çıkarılmasıdır.
Just 75 minutes into the new year, the attacker shot his way into the city's Reina nightclub, where he fired and reloaded an automatic rifle several times to shoot the wounded as they lay on the ground. 27 of the 39 murdered clubgoers were foreigners, including Lian Zaher Nasser from central Israel. The 19-year-old was celebrating with several girlfriends from her village of Tira, one of whom was wounded and had to be airlifted home. The suspect is now undergoing questioning by Turkish police, who say he entered the country illegally.
Hayır, illegal giriş. Ocak ayında illegal giriş yapıldı. Doğu sınırlarımızdan yapıldığı şeklinde elimizde kuvvetli tahminler var diye.
Security sources are reporting that the gunman is a well-trained killer who fought in Syria for the Islamic State terror group, which claimed responsibility for the attack.
Yani en azından bunun DAEŞ adına yapıldığı net.
Israelis woke up today to find out that the army and other security agencies have succeeded in widespread operations over the past 48 hours aimed at halting Palestinian terrorism. The Shin Bet security service is revealing that its forces have just broken up an extensive Hamas cell operating in the Palestinian Authority. After being tracked for weeks, 13 terrorists were arrested in a joint raid. One of those detained is a member of the Palestinian Legislative Council, which is the PA's defunct parliament. Hamas appears to be escalating its efforts to garner support from West Bank Arabs, particularly around Palestinian President Mahmoud Abbas's base in Ramallah. The so-called Hearts and Minds campaign to capture local support involves the terrorists' offers to provide social outreach projects, in addition to generous offers of financial assistance to Palestinian prisoners, terrorists' families, and a local student group. The source of the money is being traced to Gaza and abroad, including foreign terror groups. A large quantity of the dirty cash was confiscated, along with a vehicle and a trove of propaganda materials. The Shin Bet says it's learning a great deal from the discovery of this infrastructure about Hamas strategies to establish a presence in the West Bank to undermine the PA, while continuing efforts to carry out vicious terror attacks against Israelis. In addition to that, 17 other suspected Palestinian criminals were arrested in other raids across the West Bank, including one terrorist captured just north of the Jewish city of Modi'in, which is near Jerusalem. IDF soldiers also busted an illegal weapons-making facility outside of Bethlehem. Have the Israeli Prime Minister's legal problems reached the critical point where they're affecting his ability to govern? Well, not according to Times of Israel editor David Horvath, who tells ILTV's Steve Leibowitz that it would be a terrible thing if a prime minister was forced out of office due to the weight of the investigation without actually being guilty.
Look, I remember with when Olmert was prime minister, the sheer endless questioning and the new cases that would come up and so on led to assertions that he couldn't run the country effectively because he was so preoccupied with some of his legal complications, and then pressure began to grow within the coalition, and in fact it was really, I think, probably critics within the coalition that forced him to the conclusion that he had to step aside and grapple with his legal issues and couldn't carry on as prime minister. At the moment you don't see that. In the case of Netanyahu, you don't see prominent, credible members of government coming out and saying, look, this has become ridiculous. And I think...
But you also don't have too many standing up and loudly supporting him and his claims of complete innocence.
Yeah, I think there's a real onerous dilemma here. I mean, Netanyahu is the democratically elected prime minister of Israel, and there are two sets of allegations swirling around him whose full significance we don't know, whose full details we don't know. It would be a terrible thing if a prime minister was forced out of office simply by weight of investigation and it turned out that actually there was no case to answer here and there was no case ever brought here. What an incredible responsibility that would be for the Attorney General if he allowed this to reach the stage where the Prime Minister was forced out of office. It's really, really complicated. The one area where again, I still think we have to use the word allegedly and reportedly and so on, where it seems to me, where I said to you, nauseating, is the ease with which a newspaper publisher is apparently prepared to abandon objective journalism for the sake of his business interests. That I can see there. I don't know that a deal was implemented. I don't know the legality of Netanyahu maneuvering. I would have thought if you're a politician, you want to get favorable coverage. When you're offering something in return for that, the nature of that offer, the capacity of you to deliver on that offer, the question of whether you ever did anything to advance that offer. Now you're into the legal questions and the specific questions that we don't know the answer to. What we do seem to see is a newspaper publisher who is prepared to sacrifice the integrity of his newspaper.
I do want to ask you something about that. If you want to influence a newspaper, you would do what Netanyahu did with you and your staff, invite them for a meeting, discuss with them. You don't invite the publisher and try to offer him to shut down some other business or to curtail some other business that's in competition with you, especially if you don't own that other business.
It certainly has its unique aspects, that side of the story, I agree, that are beyond what we've known about in other countries and in this country. I mean, it is not unheard of, I think, anything but, that a newspaper publisher would have an ongoing, very serious relationship with a president or a prime minister, and that the politician would want to build the kinds of relationships with newspaper publishers that would boost his or her chances of remaining in office. The question of what they would do in return, the question of the nature of that relationship, the legality of that relationship. In the Israeli case, the particular influence or not that Netanyahu might have over a rival that would mean he would have tools to offer a newspaper publisher. And the legality of that, I mean, some of this is uncharted territory, but the notion of a prime minister being in touch with a publisher, I can tell you in previous jobs, have I become aware that a prime minister was upset about content and was in touch with an owner? Sure. I mean, there are pressures, and my sense of journalism is you try to do what's right and you try to serve your readers faithfully. But there would be those kinds of frictions and tensions and contacts, is I think the norm.
David Horvath, thanks so much for being with us at ILTV.
Thanks.
Israeli defense officials are refusing to comment on attempts to retrieve an IDF surveillance drone that reportedly crashed in Lebanon, although Hezbollah terrorist media is reporting that the Lebanese army and UN peacekeepers are now searching for the wreckage. An Israeli military spokesperson will only say that the army is investigating why its Skylark unmanned aerial vehicle came down after flying near the border with Lebanon yesterday afternoon. The miniature UAV is a tactical aircraft designed by the Israeli Elbit Systems defense electronics company and operated by the IDF's artillery corps to provide live video feed to soldiers on the ground. Media associated with the Lebanon-based Hezbollah terror group claims the drone crashed in a region called Labune, which is just north of the Israeli town of Shlomi. Rugged terrain in the area is reportedly making location of the debris difficult. The United Nations Interim Force in Lebanon, or UNIFIL, has neither confirmed or denied reports that its troops are also trying to find the Israeli drone. It seems as though the entire world is discussing U.S. President-elect Donald Trump's pledge to move the U.S. Embassy to Jerusalem. And now it looks like the European Union is finally speaking out. Trump's promise to relocate the diplomatic compound from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem is widely being perceived as official recognition of the city as Israel's capital. Foreign Policy Chief Federica Mogherini is now not only making it clear that the European Union won't be following suit, but is calling on other nations to also refuse.
We will for sure not move our delegation that is in Tel Aviv. And we hope that there can be a reflection on consequences of any move that is taken. We still do not have a new U.S. administration. We have an administration in the U.S., not a new one yet. And I believe that it is very important for us all to refrain from unilateral actions, especially those that can have serious consequences in large sectors of public opinions in large parts of the world.
Her comments come on the heels of the Paris conference on the Middle East that was attended by 70 countries despite being boycotted by Israel. While Mogherini shied away from explicitly criticizing Trump's plans, she voiced deep concern over reactions that might be sparked among the international community if the U.S. Embassy is actually relocated.
For sure, I'm worried that large parts, as I say, of not only institutions, but public opinion in parts of the world that are quite significant, the Arab world, but also Africa, Asia, parts of Europe, could have in reaction of a move that for sure would not be in line with, as I said, the international consensus.
Much of the world is afraid to honor Israel's declaration of Jerusalem as united and eternal capital of the Jewish people because the Palestinians claim part of the city for their future state. There are now only 3 days left to find out whether or not the incoming Trump administration will make good on its many campaign promises to initiate a more pro-Israeli platform, including the very sensitive location of its embassy. Nearly 1/3 of the deaths across the globe are caused by one thing. No, it's not terror, it's not car accidents, or even cigarettes. It's cardiovascular disease. In 2013, over 17.3 million people were victim to heart disease, and the American Heart Association expects that number to grow to 23.6 million by 2030, which is why a revolutionary method of early diagnosis is so essential. Dr. Yair Ganot, CEO of Biological Signal Processing Ltd, or BSP, has come up with an incredible and non-invasive diagnostic tool that could save millions of lives across the globe, and he's here today to tell us more about it. Thanks so much for coming in.
It's a pleasure to be here.
So to begin, tell us about this product that your company has created.
BSP essentially created a product from ECG measurements. ECG is where you put electrodes on the chest and you measure the electrical activity of the heart. And you can see various kinds of problems from this signal. The problem is that most of the patients with heart disease are not being detected with the simple ECG, and this is where we come in, and we invented this new method of analyzing the ordinary ECG.
So can you explain how this works?
Right. One of the simplest tests that most people know is the stress test. You come to the doctor, you go to a lab, a hospital, doesn't really matter. You go on a treadmill or a bicycle and you exercise. And while you exercise, your heart works under some stress. And then if you have some problem, the doctor will try to find out what that problem is. But, like I said, most of the patients are not detected with this method, and so we look in a very special part of the ECG with special software that is not available to just look at. You need this computer in order to bring out this special signal.
And it's non-invasive, which is one of the best features of this product. Why is that so important?
Right. ECG is non-invasive, as you've said, because you just use electrodes. You don't have to introduce any foreign objects into the body. You don't have to take any drugs. And that makes it a very, very safe diagnostic tool. The problem with other things are the safety issues, the radiation that you may be exposed to if you're doing CT or nuclear imaging. And ECG is completely safe.
Amazing. Now, you guys have been doing a series of clinical trials with this product. What have the results been like so far?
So far, we've had very good results. We've shown an improvement of about 40% compared to conventional ECG. So when you go and do a stress test, like I said, the doctor will not be able to find the problem, the disease, in a lot of the patients. But when you're using our method, the computer algorithm that takes out this special signal brings out most of the problem in most of the patients.
Interesting. Now, is the solution available yet? And if not, when and where will it be available?
The solution is available. After doing multiple clinical trials, we have received FDA approval and CE, so we're selling basically all over the world right now. We're not selling this software directly because you need an ECG device for the software to work. Right now we're working with Schiller. They're one of the largest European manufacturers. They're a Swiss company. And any doctor that is buying a Schiller device can actually get our software, we call it the HyperQ, and get much more accurate results. And the nice thing about it, you do the same test. You don't have to run a different test. The patient comes in, they go through the same ordinary stress test that they do anyway, but now instead of just seeing the ordinary results, you also see the special signal, the HyperQ, and the HyperQ, like I said, is much more accurate than the conventional ECG.
What has been the response from, some of the doctors that are now using this product? I mean, it's revolutionary in many senses.
It is, and we've had amazing responses from people really all over the world. Just last summer, in the European Society of Cardiology meeting in Rome, I've had people who I've never met before, obviously, from Venezuela, from Belgrade, Serbia, from countries in the Far East, really all over the world. They came up to me and told me, we've bought this software and we're just amazed to see the results. We've had hundreds of patients in our lab and the results are just remarkable.
I mean, absolutely. Again, like we said earlier, cardiovascular disease is one of the main causes of death around the world. So, I mean, you really have put a product out there that is handling one of the biggest issues that faces the world right now. So thank you so much for coming in. Very interesting to learn about this.
Thank you very much.
Speaking of more Israeli innovations, even though the Israeli medical field continues to make remarkable breakthroughs in cancer treatment almost every day, skyrocketing numbers of people continue to be diagnosed with the disease. Now, researchers in the Jewish state are turning their sights on less expensive ways to defeat it. The Israeli P-Cure startup has developed a method to cut the cost of proton therapy by 50%. This treatment uses less than half of the radiation that X-rays do, and it's even more effective because it works by painlessly delivering radiation with external proton beams that directly target tumors through the skin without damaging healthy tissue. But until now, it's been extremely costly because the procedure requires specialized equipment, including an accelerator and a centrifugal machine to generate the beams, as well as highly protected facilities. All in all, there are only about 20 clinics doing proton therapy in existence today, but the Israeli company intends to change that. First, the scientists succeeded in eliminating the need for a centrifuge, and then they even further refined software that integrates diagnostic information such as CT scans with the machine to keep the beam pinpointed on the cancer. The improved technique and massive drop in costs is expected to save countless lives around the world, because now far more patients will be able to access the treatment. It's about to become illegal for anyone to collect or release any information about operatives working for Israel's secret Mossad intelligence agency, whether the agents are still active or have retired from the service. The Israeli government is just finalizing an updated directive on a variety of related offenses that are about to be criminalized, as well as recommended prison terms for transgressors. The cabinet's already been informed of the orders, and if no opposition is voiced within a 7-day period, the matter will be voted on. Here's what you need to know. Anyone convicted of espionage will face 7 years behind bars, and if the suspect deliberately tries to harm national security, the term would range between 15 years and life in prison. The new regulations are applicable to the personal details of all Mossad personnel, including Israeli troops, service providers, or even volunteers, and that even includes any confidential information about their relatives. The statutes will also be clarifying just what constitutes secret information, and this will make it nearly impossible for any offenders to plead ignorance while carrying out violations. And perhaps most interestingly, the rules will also apply to ex-agents themselves. No one who ever worked for the agency is allowed to say so, other than its chief, who's permitted to share a few details of his choosing. We know a lot more about it, but if we tell you, we'd have to kill you. And by the way, young ladies, next time some guy hitting on you at the bar tells you he's a secret agent, now you know he's lying. Now, here's one of those great stories when science comes forward to support events that took place thousands of years ago in complete accordance with biblical accounts. University researchers in Israel say they can prove there was a solar eclipse that proves what's written in chapter 10 of the book of Joshua. The Bible tells us that soon after the Israelites entered the promised land, Joshua prayed to God to help them in their epic battle, to protect the Gibeonites by stopping the sun. The passage reads, "Then Joshua spoke to the Lord on the day when the Lord delivered the Amorites before the children of Israel. And he said in the sight of Israel, 'Sun, stand still upon Gibeon, and you, moon, in the valley of Alialon.'" That's Joshua 10:12. The multidisciplinary Israeli team says this account is unique because even though other ancient stories refer to the sun stopping, this is the only one that also mentions the moon. This led them to believe the event was a solar eclipse that happens when the moon blocks sunlight by passing between the sun and the earth. By applying data from NASA, the experts discovered there was only one such total solar eclipse in the region between the years 1500 to 1000 BCE. They say the evidence is clear that Joshua led the Israelites to victory on the 30th of October in the year 1207 before the Common Era. And because science is so exact, we know it happened precisely at 4:28 in the afternoon. You can read more about this fascinating development in the scientists' research paper, which was just published in the most recent edition of the Beit Mikra Journal for the Study of the Bible and its World. And now for our Hebrew word of the day. Sometimes it's hard to know what's going on in the world between all the conflicting stories out there. Sometimes, for one reason or another, some things are even kept secret from us, which brings us to today's word, sod, meaning a secret. Now, as many of us have learned as children, sodot are no fun. Sodot can hurt someone. And that's especially true of sodot, or secrets that are told behind our backs. Sometimes, though, we really need to keep sodot, like the code sodi, or secret code to your bank account, or a sod to be used for fun, like in a surprise birthday party. Just try hard to examine the importance and weight of your secrets, because as the saying goes, we're only as sick as our sodot. Let's go ahead and take a look at the weather forecast. Tonight should be partly cloudy and windy with a low of 52 or 11 degrees Celsius. You can expect tomorrow to be partly cloudy and with a drop in temperatures. The high is supposed to be around 68 or 20 degrees Celsius. All right, that's it for today's news. Today's exchange rate is 3.82 shekels to the American dollar. Remember to sign up for our daily newsletter at ILTV.tv. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you tonight.